Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get Writ Live. Hope you're all doing well and staying warm, to say the least. How's everybody doing? I'm so excited to be back here, and I'm also a little sad that this is the last stream of the term. So we've been doing several of these. I've had great interaction with everybody on the stream, having some guests and so forth throughout this. It's been a lot of fun. And so, we're going to wrap things up with today's focus on cozy vibes and the winter writing process and prompts, especially during these chilly times, at least in Toronto. What are our ideal writing spaces and conditions? It's something that seems to be even more present during like very warm months and very cold months, but maybe throughout the year, you're always thinking, what are my ideal writing situations? I always encourage students to think about that. Like, how can you cultivate those, especially if you're in kind of isolating conditions, right? We're all working from home. Have we been able to carve out our own ideal spaces to tinker with them in different ways to be, ideal for us to get work done, to get writing done, and so forth. For me, it's a giant sweater, so I don't know if you can really see it, but today I'm wearing my old Pug Christmas sweater that I tend to wear around the holiday season, and it's also a pen and paper. So I've got this here with me, which I'll show you here in just a second. Pull up as well on the screen. So, for me, I need a few essential things, something comfortable. Even if I'm teaching and so forth, it's got to be like a cardigan or something along those lines to be comfortable. And like pen and paper, as I've got here, oftentimes it's the way I could step away from screen time because I get pretty overwhelmed with all the screen time, right? And especially if I'm trying to focus, checking email, that sort of stuff, it's kind of flying at you, especially this time of year when grades are due and when writing deadlines are piling up. It's a lot. So using pen and paper can be super helpful for me for feeling kind of cozy, a little more comfortable. And then snacks. I don't know about you all, but I love snacks. Snacks are what kind of keep me going through the day. Oftentimes keep me awake or interested, in addition to having a standing desk and stuff like that for the most part. So, I got my goldfish mix with mixed nuts, and I'm often, having next to my desk. Usually I drink a water, something like that, and coffee, coffee all the time. So this is a shot of something I took the other day on a snowy morning here in Toronto, and I've just got it on loop, for some nice coziness you might need right outside in the snow as it was coming down. Hot cup of coffee. So I'll have that on loop, and for the most part, I'm going to be working with pen and paper today for today's prompts. So if you're interested in doing the same thing, feel free to tune in as well. I'd love to know, again, what your ideal situations are and maybe how you feel about pen and paper and its importance for getting work done, for focusing, for feeling a little more comfortable and cozy. That's the time of year, especially after you finished major projects. Maybe you want to just ease into the next term, and something like pen and paper could be pretty valuable. So we're going to focus on a couple prompts here in just a bit, but I want to ask you all again, what do you think your ideal writing situation really is? What do you imagine being useful for your own processes and so forth? While you're thinking on that, I want to mention a couple things. So we are in, like I mentioned, the last of the streams for this term. And, we've done, let's see, about, what do we do? 9 of them for the term. And we'll start those up again next year with the start of the new term. And I'll ask this to everyone later at the end of the stream, but what are some things that you want to see as part of this stream? Are there ideas that we didn't cover in the fall that you think would be really useful to discuss? A lot of these are driven by just sort of occurrences I would have, thoughts I would have, or expertise I could sort of bring to the stream, whether it be digital writing ideas of self-care. I've been reading a lot about that lately in the fields. And again, just, sensory writing and so forth that may come from things such as winter or seasons. We could talk more about publication. We could talk more about citation practices, activist rhetorics. We had some great conversations about mobile technologies and academic writing with professors Caravella and Allen. We could talk more about, just free writing prompts. We could write together, things like that. If there are things that you're interested in, additional softwares, for example, we could sample some of those. What is it that you might be interested in thinking about? So no need to answer right now. You can answer certainly during the stream. But we'll come back to that question later on too. All right, so I've talked about my ideal space for writing. And what's interesting too is that writing spaces, we think of like the writer always doing something alone. Like Linda Broadcast mentioned that, we have this sort of fantastic image of a writer writing in a cold garret next to a candle, right, and getting their work done. Well, that just doesn't happen a lot for us, at least in modern times. We're usually writing around other people, even if they're not, physically present next to us. We're competing with other sort of Wi-Fi signals, ambient sounds, people writing underneath like pillow forts and doing some really interesting things to get work done. And so I think if anything, that what the pandemic does is force us to be a little more creative about where we sort of get or try to work in a distraction-free environment. Sometimes for me, music is another ideal thing in my space. I mean, I've got music on right now. You can hear it here on the stream by Han Teller, Creative Commons material, but I've got Spotify and other music just playing all day. It's a way to kind of surround myself with an environment, with an ideal sort of sound or an environment. And if you have recommendations for sound that's helped you focus, I would love to know about that as well. I usually ask that of my students in my classes too, to say, what are some things you listen to when you're writing as well? So maybe there are sort of ambient nature sounds you work with. I know some people do that as well. There's the big ASMR movement, which I can't remember if we've really touched on in the stream, but seems to be pretty helpful for a lot of folks in replicating library environments or pen scratches and so forth. All those sort of sounds seem to be really helpful and cathartic for people. Okay, so let's move on to some winter prompts. Now, if you're doing this sort of asynchronous, you're watching the stream a little bit later on, know that you can always refer to these in the actual video description. I just posted those up. So I've got a couple of things we're going to work through. And yeah, just kind of spending some time writing together. Again, if you got pen and paper, that's even better. We can work through it in that way. Okay, so I've got my cozy things here. Let's make sure that looks good. Okay, cool. So one thing that I'm going to work out is detailing your perfect winter day, from opening your eyes to going to sleep. What does that look like for you? But I want to turn it just a little bit and kind of thinking about, what's your perfect winter day of writing from opening your eyes to going to sleep? So what does that look like? I'm going to go ahead and put this into the banner ticker so we can see what that looks like. And I'll update it on here so we can check it out. Yeah, so if you thought about this, what would be your ideal time? So what I'm going to do actually for focus is, again, I'm just trying to ideate a little bit on this idea. I'm going to set the timer for about 10 minutes, and I'll put it here next to me. And we can just kind of write about that, talk about it as we go. I may talk aloud while I'm writing, but again, kind of getting cozy. And just sort of writing with abandon, really, just trying to get some ideas down. So I'll set that, and it's up here on the clock. Feel free to jump in as well on this kind of question. And I have some somewhat atrocious handwriting, but you'll have to forgive me for that. But those are things we don't care about, right? Why we're just doing some low stakes kind of writing. Making happy sentences, as Bob Ross may say. Okay, so we have about, let's see, 4 minutes left. Get some ideas here on the piece of paper. I can like probably bring it up a little closer on the screen. But yeah, wondering what you're sort of thinking if you're doing this as well. Ideal kind of day for winter writing, winter day of writing. What does that look like for you? Okay, so my timer stopped. You know, for me, when I set my timer, it goes a little faster. I don't think I did this. We were supposed to do this on the stream at some point, but one thing that I was doing good. I think it was around the break we had for fall break, was to do an actual 50-minute prompt. I've talked about prompts that will terrify you, of course, and working with flow state and things like that. But my typical process is I set my timer for about 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and will write pretty vigorously during that time. So, for me, like 10 minutes goes really quick a bit. Those 50 minutes can drag on. For me, if I do only 10 minutes or 25 minutes, which is part of that Pomodoro timer technique that some people use, I find myself getting a little too distracted by getting up again for this, washroom snacks and stuff like that, and just kind of checking email and so forth. So 50 is a good way to kind of dial in to that. Yeah, maybe you did the writing here as well, for a writing day. So for me, one thing that I sort of talked about was, maybe I can hide my. As I'm starting to get into a project, and then kind of jotting ideas down for whatever article or book I have in progress. So as I mentioned before on the stream, I'm working on my book right now. And for me, doing some reading is a really good way to fill up the tank, and just, get some ideas moving. Or, it might be a printed copy of a transcript. So recently what I did is I printed off tons of transcripts and interviews I've been working on lately, and I just marked them up as much as I could, because for a long time I haven't actually just given myself the space to think a little more slowly, to get more comfortable with those transcripts. And so I did that for about 2 sessions. It was sort of a 2 or 3 hours of a project I was doing recently. So that was really nice. So I might do that, and then I'd start moving it over to Scrivener. So, what I have in Scrivener, I may have shown you all before this, but it could be useful to show you on the screen. Let's see if this comes up. So what's really nice in Scrivener, and I'll go ahead and mute some of this too, so we can just put it down in the corner. There we go. Is in Scrivener, which is what's really nice, is you can organize your research into like different files that don't figure into the actual manuscript. So I'm roughly 3 chapters deep in the book right now, and I've got my proposal and my development notes, and so forth on here, and lots of quotes on like collaboration and circulation and so forth that just sort of make it in here. And so what I might do is take what I've got on pen and paper after I've really spent some time just getting comfortable for the day, and then start moving it into, because once I start opening this program, the real serious work begins. I feel like I've got to get into it, start making words that are keepable, usable into the chapters. But this kind of stuff, reading working with pen and paper, is a lot lower in terms of stakes. And there's nothing wrong with iterating on that. So if I were to write all of this up, I'm probably going to think about some parts of my own process that are important, right? And I might add new ideas as I go. So I quite like this prompt. It was interesting to kind of think about my ideal conditions for composing. But yeah, what are some things maybe you wrote about, or things that are on your mind? Detailing your perfect day, winter day of writing, from opening your eyes to going to sleep, or just what's your perfect day, right? Because if you sort of write that out, are there things that you could do, in your sort of daily habits or situations to maybe bring that perfect day out to get a little closer to it? It's hard to get there, right? You have a lot of sort of things going on in the world that make it hard to do, just to get to a coffee shop or to get to some place. But if we can, at least we're sort of mindful of it, maybe it would be possible later on. And here's Abby writing, "Hello, Abby, by the way. Thank you. It would involve a coffee shop with snow falling out the window." Yes. And not that you can control the weather, so the snow would be optional. Yeah, it'd be ideal, right? I mean, something that we can kind of hope for when we go, and by checking weather and things like that. The other day, I often go down to a place called Creed's Coffee Bar downtown on Fridays, and I've made it a really good habit to go down there just because I get there, and they have like great hummus and coffee, and usually meet there with a colleague or two. And the other day, I kind of like realized that there's a table right by the window that even if it's super cold, it's still like the most comfortable, because you get that natural light coming in. You get, some of the people who are passing by, and you get to see the weather as it's sort of changing. So I think that day, it was really interesting. It moved from sun to rain, and then to a little bit of snow, and then back and forth. And it's kind of fun to see that change over time. And I think because I don't get to go to those sort of things that often, that's why I sort of, when I get a chance, we'll tape or do like a loop video or something of something you see here on the left, just a steaming cup of coffee right by a snowy sort of chair or two, or a window. Last year, when it was really difficult to go inside anywhere, a few of us kept going to writing groups on Fridays, and would wear gloves and bundle up, just because they would let us sit outside still. I think people were just, and especially writers, were just desperate to go to some different place that was outside of the home, because various things at home just sort of intersect with trying to get work done. And that's not to say that the sort of conditions you have at home aren't productive distractions. Certainly they force me to get up and move around and be mindful of the work that others might need to do, and maybe not to put so much pressure on myself to get writing done. But there is something about going to another space and knowing that you have a number of hours to get that work done, and then you can kind of leave it there. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually really looking forward to going to an office next term for teaching, because that's where I can leave my laptop, I can leave my other stuff, and I can make that my really comfortable environment. And then I can sort of leave that at work, right? And I come home, get more comfortable with family, and I'm not thinking about work, which, when those sort of comforts intersect, sometimes, they cancel each other out, I think. But that's all to say, I'm very lucky where I'm at. Recently moved to a new place. It's got lots of sunlight. It's really conducive for being productive, and I'm just working with the means that I have. So, Okay, so let's look at the next one. This is on descriptive writing, and descriptive writing for me is really important, even if you're not doing narrative writing, because when you're working through um, an essay, for example, and you're describing an event or a place or somebody you've interviewed or a community that you're describing, it's important just to pay attention sometimes to the little bits of the environment, and what that might say or show about that event, that place, or that person. So this is really important to me. When I used to be a journalist, I would sit, and sometimes before I'd even do the interview or afterwards, I would just sit and ask if I could observe what that person was doing for the day. So if I was interviewing a band, which I used to do a lot, I would come to their band practice, and I would actually just stay for the entire band practice, and then we would do an interview, or vice versa, in a different way, just because I wanted to see sort of how what those interactions were like. And it was interesting to think about, like, what was on their bookshelves, and how many wires did they have on the floor, what was happening outside that day. If we went for a walk, where were we while we were talking? What were they drinking at the time, and so forth? Was it a cup of coffee? Was it a bottle of beer? Was it something else? Or the eating as we were having lunch, stuff like that. That can really give the reader a sense of place, and it can speak to something about, again, like the event's sort of personality, or the person's personality. It can make you feel like you're there, so to speak, is what some folks will say. So sensory writing and description can be really, really great. And one of the things that they have here, this is sort of just a teaching writing teacher's website I was looking at, is to think about the prompt of setting a scene, showing images of a setting to inspire ideas. So what do we think it looks like? What does the air possibly feel like? What do you hear on the screen, and so forth? Are there things you could do? It's a bit difficult if you can't actually go out and do it right now, but if we're watching something like a live stream or another video, what senses are sort of being evoked as we watch it? So let me put this on for just a second, and then I'll set our timer, and I'll leave this kind of on in the background as well. I've got the music as well, so maybe a bit difficult to hear. I don't know if that's the important thing to pay attention to. So let's go ahead and play this. So this is a snowman time-lapse video. And as the video moves on, what are some things that you notice about it as it's sort of melting over a couple of days? It's a bit sad, right? Okay, some things we notice on there. I'm going to play this one more time, and this time I might actually make it a bit bigger so we can see it. Maybe I can put it actually on YouTube so we can check that out. And we could do it in theater mode so we can see it a little bit better. And maybe what we can do is, yeah, we can do something like that. That's probably a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, are you seeing any of those right now out in public? At my son's school, I saw like an entire field of snowmen, or snow people, I should say, just, you know, melting away, being sort of covered in like muddy snow and things like that. You know, lots of kids putting their feet on them and stuff like that with their snow boots. Yeah, but what are some things that jumped out to you? If we watch this again, what are some other things that you notice? Oh, whoops. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, I think I could do this. Gotta move this up just a little bit so we can see it. I can play it on loop. Yeah, I don't know if maybe I can't. But what I'll do is I'll set my timer again for about 10 minutes and we can kind of, we did this for a little bit. So I'll do 8. How about that? Maybe 7. Such a small amount of time. We'll try that and I'll just keep looping it for about 7 minutes. I'm going to see how much I can watch. And that's the thing too, is just like with data I've talked about this on other workshops with students. Sometimes you need to watch some footage multiple times in order to understand what's actually going on, you know, on this. I'm already picking up things as I watch this again. And if I watch it another time, maybe I can pay attention this time to the top rather than the bottom, or vice versa. So let's go ahead and set that. All right, so we've got about 7 minutes working from. Start here, and we'll go. Okay, back with you. So turn the timer off for just a little bit. Let's see. What was I had that one up. Okay, let's look at that. We can kind of keep this a little smaller in the background when we sort of think about it. But yeah, it's funny. So watching this several times, I started to notice different things, and that seems to be just again reminding me of the iterative nature of descriptive writing and sensory writing. So, if you're trying to describe your ideal place or a sort of situation or event like this one, we might think about it in the winter. I mean, notice how, first of all, there isn't any rain. It doesn't seem like, so that allows the sort of snowman to be sustained, or snow person to be sustained throughout. There aren't any vandals, so nobody comes by on the street or anything like that and actually takes it out. It occurs over what looks like several days. So this was shot on a GoPro H3, it looks like. And I think that also reminds me, there's something really valuable and interesting about doing time-lapse sort of videos of, let's say, your own process. I've had students do this before just to sort of get a sense of how long it takes to get it built up to doing a writing project, or how many nuances there are with, like, in terms of tabs you have open, other sorts of things. It's really incredible to watch those. And so, yeah, if you're ever interested in recording your own footage, what you could do is record like a whole day, for example, of you composing, or maybe even like an hour or two, and then kind of go back and see what you notice about your own habits. Even if you know that you're being recorded, there are sometimes times you're going to forget, perhaps, and then you're going to, sort of see what kind of interruptions figure into your own process, or if those interruptions are actually productive and valuable to you. And so, yeah, like every time I watch my own, when I'm doing it on a stream, I notice different things about it. One thing I saw near the end of this is, I don't know if you all picked up on this too, but notice how in the video, the face starts falling off, like before anything else. So I was writing like one by one, like the lumps of coal just fall into the ground, and like the face moves from smiling to faceless. The nose and everything, eyes all fall off, but the hat remains, which is also very interesting. And then it starts to slump forward over several hours, and even like a day. It looks like, it moves to night, and this takes like 24 hours for this thing to slowly fall, right? And then even more interestingly, like it's kind of like the head eventually becomes this sort of neck, and then it starts to fall forward. And again, it's just super interesting. So I spent my third time just looking at the snow person's face and sort of seeing what happened. And then I spent the first time looking at the top, mainly at the weather patterns, and at the bottom to see sort of like, what's that well doing there? How much water is accumulating here on the bottom? So for me, I find winter to be really beautiful. So, and also fall, just because you could see and hear lots of different things happening. And I think the snow person is a good example of, conditions of winter. And yeah, maybe that's a future project of observing, the situations in which snow people are immersed, and how sort of people interact with them and such. Okay, so I have one more thing that I'll ask everybody to think about as well. Is we've thought about maybe the textual, so we've worked with a textual prompt to think about our ideal sort of writing situations. We've looked at something on screen, but what about when we listen to things? What do we hear? I'm certainly interested in your thoughts on that. So let's look at this. I'm going to go ahead and mute the music for just a little bit and stop sharing this screen so we can remove it. Go ahead and hide that for a second. Bear with me. Share my screen. Chrome tab. What did I have? Free sound. Okay. Yeah. All right, there we go. So a slight prompt for you all. When I play this, I'm just going to play it for a few minutes. I will narrate this, and we can try it together if you want to. So I'm kind of crowdsourcing a description. But what kind of story or thoughts come to mind as you listen to these two passages? I'm going to play them together, and I'm going to introduce the third one later on. So that's about like 4 minutes or something like that, and I'll just keep it on. Let me write the prompt here so you can think about. Again, we're just trying to evoke the senses, our available means, right? So if we're trying to tell a story, what does it sound like? If we're looking at a situation or we see someone in action or we're at an event or a place, what does it sound like? Maybe we record it on our phone and then we write about it later. But for this case, we're just thinking about a sort of made up or fictional situation. What's actually happening as you listen to these sounds? Put this up on here, and I'll write the prompt in just a second while you're listening. Okay, so I could listen to this stuff all day, and for me, it's just it's soothing. It gets me thinking a bit more about senses and how critical they are to writing situations. Um, and again, this is on freesound.org. I don't know if this is actually referenced in the it's not on the page here, but it's in the video description if you'd like to check that out too. But think about how if you want to stress this idea of writing, which you've done during the stream, how could you accompany some of your writing situations with these recorded sounds? Or how could you make a soundscape, which is what a lot of people do here on Freesound. The soundscape is kind of an audio way of telling a story or creating a kind of environment. So there's lots to be had here. And I just want to play more of this again. It's so interesting to me. But so I'm going to leave that on the background as we wrap up. And like I said, folks, I really enjoyed doing this during the entire term with you all. And what I want to ask in just a minute is, what would you like to discuss on stream next term? We've talked a little bit about that here on today's stream. But yeah, thinking about what else you might want to see. This is our last one. What can we think about for the new year? Some things you might have on your mind. Before I ask that again, I just want to thank everyone again for joining the stream for the last few weeks and checking it out at a later date. We've got great numbers from our on-demand views and so forth. We've had great guests. If you have any recommended guests as well, let me know who you think would be good to bring on the stream. Maybe there's a Canadian writer or author, journalist, digital composer that you admire particularly. They could offer some insights for fellow students, faculty, and others. I have some ideas in mind too. I'm making my plans for the next year as well, so you can expect some really great guests as well on the stream to talk for roughly half an hour or 45 minutes or so about their processes. So more to be announced later on at the start of the next term. But yeah, again, we have a lot of flexibility here on the stream, and I'm very grateful to the Writing Center and the Writing Department for commissioning this second season, if you will, of WRIT, which was originally sort of YU WRIT Live, and was an asynchronous sort of series of videos done by students in intermediate digital authoring practicum, or WRIT 4001. And I think we've got a lot of good ideas just doing this stream, keeping it a bit more casual, more conversational, and so forth. And I hope we can continue it in the next year as well. But let's just go one term at a time. And we've wrapped this one up, and so we're moving into the next one. So I will be back in January for the stream. If you have other ideas outside of this chat as well, feel free to write me. You can reach me at on my email address, which is on the York website, or you can write here in the comments as well. So I'm currently managing both of those, and I'm happy to use any and all of that sort of feedback to shape this series moving forward. Okay, folks. Well, that about does it for me. It's a little bit after 12:30. It is time for some more snacks and cozy vibes as I get into the afternoon. I'll be teaching later this afternoon. I'll also be working in the Writing Center for the next week or so for one-on-one appointments. So feel free to get in touch as well if you want to talk about your own practices. Other than that, good luck with finishing your finals, any major projects, and forthcoming exams, and I'll see you next term.